Luka Nation. I mean, what a treat! If if we could round out this week, here we are Friday recording. I couldn't think of a better guest to join us on Lucas Tigers and Bronze than this gentleman sitting across from me. So, episode 691, we have a legend in the game, a collector, someone who runs an auction house that's as respected in the game for over 40 years. Some of you might know him, but I think over this next hour, I'd stay till the end. I think there's going to be gems, there's going to be nuggets, there's some beautiful memorabilia. David Kohler.
It's not going to be no nuggets. It's going to be all Lakers.
David Kohler, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on. No, I love your show, and let's have some fun here and talk about the industry. And we have our auction coming up at SCP Auctions, and all those things. I've done this for a long time.
So if you guys don't know, I mean, head to scpauctions.com and then click the green enter auction button at the top right, and just do some window shopping, browse, have some fun. Even if these items, you know, they might be out of your price range. I asked David, is there any Kobe game signed jerseys for under $1,000? He said it's not 1940, so, but it's still fun to browse. Can we get into really quickly the origin story? I know people will laugh, but like, how did you get into collecting? How did you find yourself where you are?
Well, because it's important, right?
Yeah.
That this is an auction house run by a collector, right? That's not always the case. I mean, there are many of them out there. And guys, this is an episode before he gets into the origin story, which is Angel's favorite thing. I did not want to do this. Not because I have anything against David or his business, but because, the people who know me and ask for little hints and stuff in the hobby, I'm always, ready to give them my inside info, but not broadcast it out to thousands of people who are going to listen to this in the first 24 hours and watch it on YouTube, because check out what's behind David, and we'll get to that in a minute. But this is an auction house that they have some really nice items, and they kind of operate, I don't want to say under the radar. I mean, David's well known in the industry, people who have done this for a long time. But, the newbies to the hobby who came in the last, 2 years, 18 months that know Zion, Luka, and nothing else, they may not know SCP. Hi, Andrew. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's been around forever, and I mean, a reputation, that it's never been questioned, always above board. But I like it. I tell people about it because I think it's a place where, you can get some surprisingly awesome stuff. And it shouldn't be surprising, but it is to the new entrants into the hobby. So, guys, take a second, like Andrew said, and check out the website. Push pause if you like. I mean, everything from a sick Kobe game-used rookie jersey to mantle rookies to, all the way down the line. Some real high-end stuff, 7-figure stuff already with the auction ending in over a week. So take a look. David, I apologize for jumping and stepping on the origin story, but this is one of those things. People message me all the time. Hey, it's harder to navigate, the hobby now. What do you do? How do you find stuff, that is cool to buy, and I'm not going to break the bank, and I'm not paying at the peak? And I tell them, look, I bought a card from Robert Edward last week, which shouldn't be an under-the-radar auction. Everybody knows who they are if you've been in the hobby for more than a year, right? I bought a card from them for half of what it should have sold for. So I tell people, check it out, SCP. So hopefully you guys, that's it. You're not going to be under the radar for long, but there we go. All right, origin story. Go ahead. Sorry
yeah. Well, first of all, we've been in business 40 years, so SCP Auctions has been around a long time, and certainly we've been doing this from the early stages of, baseball cards and having stores, and then obviously building our auctions and doing that online. We used to, for 5-6 years, we partnered with Sotheby's in New York and did auctions on the highest level, co-branded my company SCP Auctions with Sotheby's. So we've done a lot of big things and sold multi-million-dollar items. But yeah, you're right. We also, in our auctions, there's going to be things that sell for a few $100s to a few $1 million, and everything in between. All categories will be there. I think there's over 900 lots in this auction that'll be closing on June 4th. So, but the origins are basically grew up in California, south of LA. Was born in Los Angeles. It was kind of where my Laker fandom came from. I was born right down the street, actually, at Daniel Freeman Hospital, right by the Forum where the Lakers used to play before they went to Staples. So I kind of was just in my blood, I guess. But just started in high school. I collected when I was young, collected baseball cards, in the late 60s and 70s. And then when I got into high school, started to get some older collections from some of the kids in the neighborhood. And I remember having like a 1954 Topps Barra that some older kid had. And I thought that was just such a cool card. And really started to buy cards. And my mom worked part-time at a classified ad thing that used to be in the mail called the Penny Saver. And she would get free ads for me. So I would run ads in there that said, hey, buying baseball cards. And that's really the genesis of where we all started over 40 years ago. And I would run around Orange County, and I had a few $1,000s maybe, which was a lot of money to a 16 or 17-year-old. And then all of a sudden I could fill my truck up, going around picking up cards everywhere. And then what happened is I ran out of money. And so instead of saying I'm going to hold these for 20 years, these cards, I said, maybe I should sell some. I don't really know what I'm doing, and the first price guide came out in 1979, the first Beckett book that was actually, you could go and look up prices, that was printed and brought structure to our market. And so I started to go to some little card shows, and I just would mark up my cards. I didn't know what to sell them for, and people would buy them from me. Dealers would come and pick through, and all I know is I was making some money. And then I went out and bought some more, and that's kind of where this all started. And then I opened a store in 1981, 82, and a 350 square foot store for $350 a month. And the first day I opened, I was selling cards like hotcakes.
Just to give you guys context, I don't know if you saw Winning Time, the HBO series. I want to ask you how much of that's true. I mean, Dr. Buss bought the entire Lakers for like $67 million. So prices were very different. Did you watch Winning Time, the HBO series? You probably lived it.
I did. Buss actually, for about 60 plus million, he got the Lakers, the Kings Hockey Club, the Forum, and a ranch that Jack Kent Cooke owned. He got all of that for 60 million, leveraged it, this and that. And about 6 years later, he sold the Kings for about 60 million. So he recouped all his money in about 6 years or so.
Well, that's because he had Magic Johnson basically will them to a championship his first year.
For sure. Obviously the Lakers were lucky to get him. And obviously watching that show Winning Times, you saw that, they won their first year. And obviously Showtime developed with Magic and Larry Bird and the Celtics rivalry, and Lakers winning, 5 championships through the 80s. And the TV broadcasts were just, it was just the whole NBA changed after that. And then Michael Jordan came along, and the rest is history.
In your opinion, so it's funny, like this hobby, it's baseball cards. We even called them baseball cards. When did it switch? When did it start becoming like basketball? You started collecting basketball cards, I guess it wasn't Jerry West. It was after that, right? It was Magic, Bird, Jordan. Were you collecting basketball then, or is it still baseball?
I want to see this answer.
Yeah, the 80s is mostly baseball.
Even with all those guys out.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
I can tell you this: 86 Fleer obviously was, a huge card product, right, with the Jordan rookies. But from what I remember back then, we only got so many boxes of those. Maybe we got a case or two for our store. This is a long time ago. I'm trying to think. Back in '86, but we sold them for whatever they were, $10 or $15 a box, probably. I'm guessing, and they were, they didn't sell crazy, and so. Basketball more happened as we got more into the 90s. And I kind of remember Stadium Club 93 with Shaq rookie.
Shaq.
Right.
That's my answer.
That was a start. That definitely was, I would say, where we're going, okay, the modern card market, that's what we're talking about in basketball. That's where I think it really took off. And if we were geniuses.
That was the first time I collected from the mid 80s. The first time going into a sports card store as a kid looking for basketball was when Shaq came. Before that, it was never basketball. 93, you'd still had Finest Baseball came out, which was a huge driver. But people were trying to get Shaq rookie cards. People were buying 92 Upper Deck for those cards. People were buying Fleer Ultra. Basketball really exploded with Shaq. There were all of these additional sets and different stuff that came out. I mean, baseball was exploding too. But baseball, you still had Griffey. Griffey was 89, 90. I mean, he was blowing up. Frank Thomas. You had all these guys that you were collecting. Jeff Bagwell. But yeah, 92, 93 was when basketball. I'm telling you, Andrew, people went back, and it wasn't just Shaq. Jordan was coming into his own at this time also, so people were buying, looking for Jordan, and there were a couple, like we have now, a couple good rookie classes. I mean, I don't want to go down that road, but that's.
It's a good place to go because I'm curious. I mean, David, you've been through these cycle, so to speak. And right now, right now on the internet, there's a fun Instagram debate. Can you compare cards to the stock market? Can you not? But one thing I know from the stock market is it doesn't like uncertainty. And being through some of these cycles, I'm curious, what are you seeing now in the hobby, right? Fanatics has taken over licenses, grading, there's backlogs, there's a lot of uncertainty in this space. Anything you're seeing that, you could share your wisdom from what you saw during those times to kind of fast forward to 2020 to where we are now and maybe put people's mind at ease?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how we're going to define this, right? Like if we're going to talk about vintage, that's always been strong and grew and matured over the years, whether we're talking about game-worn items or vintage cards, high-end cards, graded cards. And then we're going to talk about the modern card market and the new card product coming out. I'm not an expert on new modern cards. Certainly we handle a ton of those, but, I feel like, Fanatics getting the licenses and that, I tend to feel that's going to be really good for our market. And the reason why, this is my prediction, is they're going to be able to sell, these card products and boxes and cases to they have 80, 90 million customers that they're already selling. They have a database already that they've done business with people that have bought their hats, their sweatshirts, their pendants, their coffee mugs with whatever their favorite team are. They've been doing that forever, and they're the biggest in the world. Now they're going to say, oh, by the way, we also have, you can buy the latest stadium club or this and that. Obviously they bought Topps, right? So, and they're going to keep that name. They're going to keep the company name, which is great for us traditionalists, right? I think that's going to be good where someone goes, wow, I'm, on the website today and I'm going to buy all my Green Bay Packers stuff because the football season started. Oh, I'm going to buy some cards too. They have access now. I think that'll be good for the market as long as the manufacturers don't oversupply. That's the only thing that kills everything.
Too late.
And, that's my take. But on the vintage stuff, I mean, over time, it's been like incredible, like all the things that we have sold in the whole market. When you look at this, I mean, I used to say we added a zero to everything, right? Something we sold for $1,000 is now 10 grand, 100 grand. It's even more than that with a lot of these pieces. And at the end of the day, we sell collectibles, we sell sports, right? It's not going away. Everybody loves sports. It's not a fad. And it's a thread that's part of your world every day, whether you're playing sports yourself, you're watching your favorite team, you're going to your games, you're taking your kids to these games, or they're in Little League. I mean, it's all this. We're a part of that pie, and that's never going away. And that will always save everything. No one's going to wake up next year and go, you know what? I just don't like sports anymore.
If anything, I mean, athletes now are so much more powerful in culture than they were 30, 40 years ago, right? There's like the whole thing. Jordan was playing against plumbers. Well, now LeBron's opening up schools. I mean, like their reach of athletes is crazy. When did SCP auctions come around? Is that 90s, 2000s? When did you start SCP?
Well, I started actually in high school, so it's 1979 we started. And obviously we had some stores through the 80s, kind of a natural thing that everybody did, and doing conventions, right? And going to the national convention and, doing a convention every few weeks. That's kind of how you met your clients back then and other dealers. This is before computers and internet, right? And then as we got into the 90s, the market was taking off, bigger and bigger. And now computers, now internet, now you could connect and not have to go to all these shows and auctions with, obviously today there's people worldwide that bid in our auctions and other firms, and it's just easy access. The technology is there to do the bids. The programs handle it. All the images are there, all the write-ups. You don't have to hop on a plane and fly to New York and have to be there to participate. And, the more you can open up any market and have, the accessibility, the more that market is going to grow. And that's what's happened in the sports memorabilia market.
So were you like a child prodigy? Because no one was like, hey, David, you go to Wall Street, or go trade stocks. What are you trading cards for? Or were you just like a child prodigy, making stacks of money and,
I just, originally I wanted to be a doctor, and I started to go to pre-med while I was in the business, and I realized I wasn't really that smart to, compete in the getting straight A's and go to medical school for the next 12 years, and on the side I'm making money selling baseball cards, right? So that's what happened, and I kind of chose that path, and not knowing what was going to happen, and it all worked out. And
you do what you love.
Yeah.
It reminds me what we're talking about now is, another person wanted to go to medical school, and he couldn't. He realized he was too squeamish, and would go fishing with his dad. Try to put the hook in. The eye would come out. He says optical poptitude, right? Oh, I couldn't do it. And I finally got a laugh. That if anybody can tell me what movie that's from, in the comments or send me a message.
I'll send you a couple.
No, but close. It's an American favorite actor, top American actor, but before he became America's favorite actor, I would say. But anyway, it's a good one. But send me some messages. I'll send somebody something free for getting that one right. Optical poptitude. He says it while he's doing stand-up on stage. He's bombing. But the point is, he wanted to go to they wanted him to go to med school, but he became a stand-up comedian, and that was what he loved, and he got very good at it, and the whole deal. We tell people buy what you love. And every once in a while, I completely butcher the quote from Walt Disney that says, do something you love for a living and you never work a day in your life, something like that. You got it in front of you here. You know what I mean? He's making money,
I'm very
he's
blessed.
enjoying it. Come on now, a collector.
But that begs the
Absolutely.
question: what do you love? Do you love collecting, or do you love running the business?
Well, I've kind of done both paths. So obviously, the business is making a living and do this and that, but I always loved collecting on the side too, and I kind of focused on obviously the Laker memorabilia, loving that team, playing basketball, doing that kind of thing. So that was kind of my outlet, because certainly we get all this great stuff in, Mickey Mantle game worn jersey and a Babe Ruth autograph ball, and game used bats of Ty Cobb and all this great stuff, high end cards, right? Like we've sold the Wagner, the PSA 8, we sold that the last time it traded for $2.8 million, 15 years ago or whatever. That's so fun handling that stuff, but you have to sell it, right? You have to make a living. You can't keep it all. So
Andrew, I hope you're paying attention, because Andrew went down to Florida and he's telling me all the time he wants to open up a dispensary, right? And I tell him, I said, method man, you can't get high in your own supply. Like you'd make no profit. And I would imagine, David, it's tough. An awesome Lakers piece comes in, you're like, I'm just gonna take that to my Laker room. I can't sell it, but you gotta sell it. This is the business.
Yeah.
It's gotta be difficult.
Yeah, we have a lot of expenses, right? We have employees and rent and marketing and all kinds of crazy stuff. And
Andrew,
it's just like, yeah,
that big bud, the Candy Kush comes in, and you're like, oh, I want this for my precious. I want it for myself. No, you can't.
This isn't Whatnot. This is our normal crowd. This isn't 17 and 18-year-old kids. I can't
call
help
me
but
Grandpa.
notice you don't have a LeBron jersey back behind you.
Ooh.
No. Well, I do have a Laker. I do have Laker LeBron. They're in front of me actually. So, I do have a few of those.
So Rob
we actually have one
Pelinka,
at our auction right now. That's the purple jersey. I think it's already at like 60 some odd thousand.
I love it. So let's give you a hypothetical. Pelinka's gone. Genie Magic decided. No, we need David Kohler. What are your first moves? What do you change up about this team? You know this team as well as anyone.
Oh boy, just stop getting injured. Stop getting injured and
you're
get rid of
Anthony
Westbrook.
Davis right now, right?
No, get rid of Westbrook. But that's after this last season, that's easy to go right there. But we'll see where it goes. That's why, when you win, you got to enjoy it. We won 2 years ago, but there's no certainties, right? Here we are now.
Fake bubble championship. Fake bubble championship.
I don't know. Some people argue that was the toughest, but we don't need to debate that. We're here to talk about sports memorabilia.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to enjoy the championships, because there's no guarantee. And as we know, the injuries and all the things, and these players, most of them, they move around so much, right? Like,
That's right.
That's what I love about Kobe Bryant and Magic Johnson. If we're talking about Lakers, is they were Lakers their whole career. Larry Bird was a Celtic his whole career.
Yeah, it's a good. It's a
Michael
good point.
Jordan, a Bull.
Do you think that hurts? Do you think it hurts the players now? You think it'll hurt maybe the market going forward, right? Where it's like LeBron, you say, hey, you didn't have any LeBron jersey. Like, well, have some Laker jersey. Like, do people want the Lakers? Do you lose, some of the fans? Or is it actually a good thing because now, LeBron stuff appeals to 3 different audiences?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely fans definitely just follow players with whatever teams they go to. But then there's certainly when you've got a great player on your team and if you won some championships with him and then he moves on to another team, that just doesn't feel good. But it happens. It's just how the business is today, right? The dollars and the cents and the moving around. And, the old days of, if we're talking basketball, you usually got traded toward the end of your career when you were just had a couple of years left. Now these guys are, Kevin Durant's, everywhere.
He might change team. So I what makes our show really special, and I think why our audience kind of, maybe we have a kindred spirit with them is I came into this hobby. Yeah, I collected a little in the 90s, Terrell Davis, Brett Favre. I don't know why, because I'm from Philly, but
because they were awesome.
Relatively new. Cage has been collecting for 4 decades. He opened packs with his father. So we have this dynamic of kind of the old guard and the new guard. I always like to get people like you who are esteemed, respected, have tons of experience to also pick their brain from a business standpoint, because a lot of people in the last few years have opened businesses, David, and what advice, what suggestions, what tips might you have for these people who kind of gave up their previous lives and said, I'm going to go all in on cards. I'm going to open up an LCS. I'm going to, break full-time on whatnot. I'm going to be a consignor. I'm going to be a YouTuber. What advice do you have for this younger generation? It's exciting that they're getting into space and committed to it, but maybe you can help them avoid some pitfalls or mistakes.
I mean, certainly a lot of people have come to the market the last few years, and the pandemic, everything went to overdrive after that, right? If someone would have said a few years ago, hey, there's going to be a pandemic, the next one now, it's been 100 years, and why this happens, why everybody's staying at home, the sports card and memorabilia market's going to, go into overdrive. I would have said they were crazy, but that's what happened. So certainly people from there want to get into the business, right? And that's what's going on. And there's different ideas and, this pack breaking and this and that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's the people that stick at it, and you have to be flexible, right? Because markets do change, businesses change. In the 40 years that I've done this, there's been a lot of changes, and you have to kind of roll with that and don't be a dinosaur. But you have to, you have to stick with it, and you got to work at it, right? Like anything else of any other field, you got to work at it, because it's just not all about, it's easy money right now, and I could just buy something and then mark it up and I make money. That's not a normal business, right? So that's really my, without getting into particulars, that's really what it is if you really want to stick it out, learn other markets, because sometimes what you might be selling today or marketing, not everybody may want it 5 years from now. So, you need to educate yourself. If you're talking in the business as a dealer at whatever level, you need to, stay on the trends, what's going on out there. And really,
David, I think basically what I would say, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I know some people don't like to toot their own horn, but with an auction house that's been around since the 70s and you're doing it this many decades, you see the market cycles, right? And it would have been easy for you in the 90s to dedicate a whole auction away from your bread and butter, away from your vintage cards, away from the cards, and start selling Pogs and Beanie Babies. Right? It would also, but you didn't do that, right? Because you knew, and it's okay to dedicate some, right? If somebody wants Beanie Babies and there's a Princess one selling for whatever it is, all right, we can sell an auction. If there's an interest in that and somebody wants to do it, great, we'll do it. But you don't lose your identity chasing the new hot, shiny thing, right? And I venture to say that you probably have thought to yourself, wow, these breakers right now are making a ton of money. I should also dedicate some resources to SCP breaks, but you don't do that. You say, I have
David
thing,
would dominate
right?
if he went SCP.
He would, and I'm sure he would. But the thing is, when you have an identity, right, you have this thing that people know you for, and people know you're not going away, right? It's okay to delve into something else. It's okay to dive into 5%, 10%, but as long as your bread and butter is there, people will know that'll be there in 5 years when that other shiny shit like Beanie Babies is collecting dust in people's basements, right? And you didn't change your whole identity chasing that new thing. That's the advice that I would give to new businesses right now, because what we see is people coming in, it's like a cat watching a tennis match. It's like, okay, we got raw. We're going slab. All right, we're going vintage.
Can I just add one thing? For you guys who've been in this for a long time, you guys know what the shiny stuff is. For us who've only been in it for a while, we don't know.
It's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, again, you said earlier, collect what you really like, and it doesn't always have to be the shiny stuff, but kind of go back, sports memorabilia, when it really got structured. I say is when the first price guide came out in 1979. So that's been about 40 years. We'll look and see what 20, 30 years ago, what were people going after that are still doing that today. That's your base. That's your, we could say it could be 20 different categories. There's still going to be the other shiny stuff that's going to come and go, right? That's always going to happen. But look at that. And that's what people always are going to want. And
be careful with
that would be my
Dave,
advice.
Right? Because there are not many people who are out there looking for a 54 Topps Yogi, which was real cool when you picked it up. And this was a lesson I had to learn, Andrew. I mean, we don't all know everything, right? I mean, I bought a Yogi PSA 9 1949 Bowman. Was it 48, the rookie, the first one.
Yeah,
PSA 9. There's 10 of them and 110. And I'm like, I'm getting this. This is amazing. I paid a lot of money.
Cage has no shiny cards.
I don't like shiny cards. That's about as unshiny as you can get. But I bought it and I would show it to people like, isn't this awesome? Yogi's the best catcher to ever play. Look at all the championships he has. He's an amazing Yankee. All these MVPs. Just look at his stats. And people are like, who
He never
cares?
dated Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, exactly. People are like, who cares? Like that's just not the guy. Now, trust me, I think that card is up from where I bought it, but most things are. But if I would have put that 20 grand into a lot of other things that people actually want instead of just what one person wants, that's kind of what I try to teach people as well. 54 Topps, David, you should have been looking for a 54 Topps mantle. Yeah,
exactly. If I could have found that, I wouldn't be working anymore.
Exactly, because we don't want to know why that's funny,
exist.
Andrew. There you go. It's like my cousin.
Actually,
Vinny.
Can I share a Yogi story with you?
Please.
Can I show a Bear story with
Yogi
you?
Berra.
I love you.
So Yogi,
that's my man.
Is he okay? So Yogi had his museum in Montclair University? I want to say New Jersey.
Yeah,
is that correct? Mm-hmm. And so in early 2003-04, we found Babe Ruth's bat that he hit the first home run out of Yankee Stadium that was autographed. It's one of the greatest pieces I've ever handled. We sold it back then for $1.265 million, which today that would be worth over $5 million. But the reason I'm bringing that up, how Yogi fitted into that, is we loaned him the bat to display in his museum for a month, and it was kind of good marketing for our company, SCP Auctions. I brought it out there back then to him, and I got to have dinner with Yogi, and he said thank you so much, and we loaned it to the museum before we sold it. And I asked Yogi, I said, hey, do you have your first home run bat from Yankee Stadium? And he looked me in the eye and he said, I'm sure I used it in the fireplace. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, oh, in the off season, I cut all my bats up all the time, my game used bats, and we would use them for kindling wood in the fireplace. And he was serious. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of Bear game used bats out there.
In the 40s and 50s, people did not know that this was going to be a thing. They passed the bats on. They left them. They let the teammates use them. When people left the team, they left their bats there. I mean, it was it was Hillerich and Bradley. Were the ones making
Louisville
the bats
Slugger,
at the time. Louisville, the previous, right before Louisville, right? And I mean, there was some other.
They didn't want to leave them for their kids.
No, people did not. That was not a thing. Sports memorabilia was not a thing. You think these guys said, I'm going to go play baseball and then I'm going to sell my bat to somebody? They played baseball and then they bought a car dealership. Right. Money was not the way it is now flowing, and it wasn't sports memorabilia wasn't something people went after. Baseball cards were some people went after in the 50s. Yogi Berra could have made more money if he would have just started collecting Mickey Mantle cards. You know what I mean? But nobody was doing it. That, by the way, is what makes these things so valuable at the time. Right, even Ruth, right? I mean, people were keeping Ruth's balls because he was a giant at the time. But people were taking, Mickey Mantle cards and dumping them in the river. People were taking Mickey Mantle cards and putting them in their bike spokes, right? And listen, what's funny about it is, people try to do this now, but if Luka's Prism cards were part of a game, where people smashed them or whatever it is, then the fact that 34,000 of them were graded, you'd have a lot less of them. Like that's part of the difference in collecting now versus then. Like a card comes out of a pack now, and people are trying to make it a collectible that's going to have value over time. There's a reason why some of these modern ones will never have that collectability these other ones has. Part of it is they weren't collectible to begin with. Yogi, right. And look what David finished that with. Yogi's game use stuff is more valuable now because he was burning them in his fireplace. You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of the
scarcity.
Exactly. A lot of the early, we saw a lot of World Series rings, Super Bowl rings. We're one of the biggest market makers in that, auctioning them off and also brokering and selling them privately for collectors. And early World Series rings, the earliest one was 1922 New York Giants. Finding World Series rings in the 20s and 30s and even in the 40s is very difficult because, first of all, they only gave them to the team members and some staff, coaches, this, that, not a lot. They don't put out 300 like some of the teams do now or more.
Yeah, and think about the metal usage. You had the Depression, you had the wars, and people who needed that metal, the people sold them.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. They would take the diamond out, the single diamond out of a World Series ring, and they melted the gold. There was no memorabilia value back then. So now you fast forward 80 years, you're like, where's all these, early World Series rings? Well, they don't exist. There's some of them, there's only 5 or 10 known that might've been sold from, some of the players' families over time, but that's it. The rest of them are just gone.
Can you give me like, cause the Babe Ruth bat you mentioned you sold for 1 million and change, would be 5 million plus. Are there, 1, 2, or 3 items that come to mind that you've always wanted to hold, and they're out there, but they've eluded you? Do you have that? Or if you can't say it, it's okay.
He's one of the few people that have the PSA 8 Wagner in his hands, so it's
the
tough.
one that was eaten by a dog. That one's really cool.
No.
Yeah. We handled that card, and that card, we sold that card. The last time it traded was 2007, 2.8 million. The owner of the Diamondbacks owns that. I can say that because it's public knowledge and it's not confidential.
Mantle?
The Honus Wagner.
He has a mantle 10
too, right?
He has a mantle 10 too.
10s. And you want to laugh? Take it all back to Yogi. Remember how I said I bought a 9 and there's 110 out there? He owns the 10 of that also.
Yes. Exactly.
He's got a pretty nice collection.
I'm gonna see.
That Wagner card today is worth over 40 million, 50 million. A 52 mantle and a 10 or same thing, right? 30 million plus. There's only 3 of those. I mean, the dollars are it's mind boggling. But yeah, certainly there's some, if you're asking me, is there things out there I'd love to find? We did handle a Ruth Yankee uniform, the earliest known 1920 era, circa 1920. That brought 4.4 million about 10 years ago. It's certainly worth a lot more today. I'd love to find a Red Sox Babe Ruth uniform. No one knows if it exists.
Burn it.
Never been seen. Yeah, burn it. But I mean, there's things out there, like in my personal collection, Lakers, no one's ever seen a Jerry West rookie uniform. I'd love to find that. No one's ever seen it. They made a home and a road. Jerry West doesn't have it. I know. I praise his collection. It's probably just gone. It's just the home or road. It probably doesn't exist at this point.
I'm just kidding, Jerry. It was from the show. I was just joking. I didn't mean it. Don't beat me up.
Yet another letter we're going to get from a lawyer.
They're all from you. So one of the big changes, and I'm curious, how you see this, because Easy Money was grading over the last 2-3 years, right? One of the biggest changes, and like the way I understand from Cage, is 80s, 90s, maybe late in their 90s, grading became a thing.
Oh, later than that.
A little later than that even?
Yeah.
What do you make of the current grading? You're close to PSA. They've had this backlog. They've received millions of cards. Card Collector 2 came on our show. He made a good comment. We had the junk wax era. Now we're entering into the junk slab era where like anything and everything will be in plastic. You have any thoughts on it?
I mean, certainly it's gone that way. And, PSA's got, millions and millions of cards that they're trying to catch up to grade, and some of the other card companies, grading services too, SGC and so on. going back to the early 90s when they began grading cards, I was for it. I was, I never thought it'd come to where we are today, where there's millions of cards and people are just throwing everything into you got to think about, don't pay $50 to grade a card that's worth $8, right? But maybe some people don't think about it that way, but that's what's going on. But in the early stages, I was definitely behind it. I wasn't, if you didn't want to sell cards in holders, that's okay. But certainly we all knew the market would grow, the confidence in the market for people that spend big bucks on these cards. They need to have some kind of third party that says this Mickey Mantle card is near mint to mint and it's an 8 and that's what it is. And then you share that information to the world for free on the internet. You say, this is the population and here's some price guides and we'll help you along with that. That's how more people are that have gotten the market. I'm talking about, collectors and or investors have gotten the market because of that.
For David, it was obviously something that made sense. For most people that David knew who were not in his position, they probably resisted it, at least my memory, because obviously for David, it makes sense. For an auction house, right, there is one interesting thing at the time before grading, Andrew. If you were selling a Mickey Mantle 52 tops, your job was, and it still is to a certain extent, right, but a lot less with the third-party grader involved. Your job was to, as fiduciary to the buyer, to the consigner, and you have to do your job of come up with a description and saying this card, in our opinion, with our 20 years or 30 years of experience, it's one of the nicer ones we've seen. We put it in the excellent to near mint category or near mint to mint category or whatever it is. And the buyer now has to say, okay, well, do I trust that? Are they inflating it a little bit? And especially if you're doing sales, that it's not all in person. Somebody's looking at it online because now you have the internet coming and the whole deal, right? All of it kind of happens at, pretty similar time, same decade. And this now brings a third-party authentication into it, right? An escrow company, so to speak, right? Somebody who doesn't have an interest in what a buyer gets, what the seller gets. It makes it a lot easier for someone in David's position to say, okay, we love this card. It's PSA encapsulated a 6, and that's what the third party has said. And take their word for it. We're not, saying it. Believe it or not, it's actually swung now back to it, where the auction houses are saying this is a 6, but we've handled enough of these to tell you it's a good 6. You know what I mean? So
of course,
crazy
it's made it so much easier though for dealers and collectors, investors. I mean, it's made it very fluid because, in the 80s, I'd be on the phone and I'd have a 54 tops Aaron card that was very nice. It was, like you said, back then you'd say X to near mint, right? Like today, if you said that, they're like, what? Like, what are you saying? X to near mint? Like that's a broad scale there, right? But that's how it was.
That's like 2 through a 6, right? 2 through a 7,
well, not that much, but a lot, right?
Like you're in like a 5 to 7 there. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But the old days, I would be on the phone and I would tell a client, hey, I've got a really nice 54 Aaron rookie card. It's really nice. This is before grading. And you would tell them that and you'd explain it to them. And then they would just have to, they believe you and you would send it to them and you'd sell it for, $400 or whatever it was back then. Now, all you have to say is, hey, I have a PSA 6. That's an X mint. And it's, $1,400. And I'm sending you a scan of the front and back right now. Boom, there it is. You text it, you email it, and it makes the transaction so easy. Everybody knows what they're getting. It's graded. And they also are authenticating it, right? They're saying that card is really a 54 tops Hank Aaron. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. And that's good for everybody. Because
which in the 80s and early 90s, right? With the cards starting to boom, so did the fakes. So did a lot of fugazi stuff get printed.
As soon as the prices go up.
I had that conversation today. Like, how hard is it to really counterfeit one of those early cards?
I mean, it's hard to do that, but it's another reason why you need these grading services to look at all this stuff to make it, less of incentive for someone to try to do that, because that ruins the market for everybody, right? The whole industry, dealers, collectors, everybody. And now, the old days, the media loved to talk about, that this certain card or this find of this and that, and it's sold for all this prices. Now the media's, they're going to go report a negative story, right? They're looking for that now because they've already reported all the good stories, the last 30 years I'm talking about. So,
yep.
You know, it is. You have a good experience in a restaurant, someone tells 5 people. You have a bad experience in a restaurant, you tell 20 people. That's just human nature.
Right.
And so,
100% right. And the authenticity,
services.
David, you're 100% right. I mean, I remember in 2003, I was trying to build a 1933 Gaudi set. And I've been buying them on eBay. I started going to, do raw, you name it. And I remember I bought like 4 different Bill Terrys before I finally got one I was able to submit that PSA would actually slab. The first 3 came back trimmed, fake, and that's not even like a crazy card. You know what I mean? Like, a couple $100, in decent grade. So, I mean, after doing that for the first, 6 months and basically 50% of the cards I was buying on eBay, came back that PSA wouldn't even slab the things. They weren't authentic or they were trimmed or they, altered. I just started buying, graded cards. And it's,
right.
I mean,
the story you just mentioned is that's a great example. So there would be a lot of collectors after the experience you just went through on those Bill Terry cards. They would have left they wouldn't have collected cards anymore. And then now they're gone. They're going, this is Mickey Mouse. I'm out of here.
Yep.
Instead, now it's very easy now. You make your purchase one time. It is what it is. You're not having to go through it 4 times. And that's how it should be.
I think I still have them somewhere because once PSA,
it's in the basement.
No, I think it might actually be really close. Maybe if you give me 2 seconds, I'll see if I can find one. But once somebody tells me it's fake, I'm not putting it back in the market. I'm not going to go put it back on eBay and be like, okay, go ahead, sorry. I'm just not doing that. Which is another cool thing, right? I mean, if a card like that gets in hands of someone who's got some scruples, now PSA had the ability to take it out of the market and take it out of circulation. This way, somebody else doesn't get screwed.
That's what it's all about.
So we do a weekly show with collectibles.
Let's see if I can find that, Andrew. I'll be right back.
Partially, it's about sports cards, but a decent size of their offering is memorabilia, and I love memorabilia. I think it's so cool, but I'm as amateur as it gets. What I'm like, okay, Luka game worn jersey. Well, that's great and all, but I mean, Luka's playing now. How many game worn jerseys is he gonna have? How rare is that really? And what separates this one from being this? So I could logically think through that, but like people who are trying to get into memorabilia, maybe they have 100,000 in cards and are like, I kind of want some cool stuff. Do you have any like advice? You have like a guide to like, here's what to look for in memorabilia?
I would say figure out what category you like, because there is a lot of great memorabilia you can buy, whether it's game used bats, game used jerseys, obviously signed balls, whatever sport you're thinking about, game worn shoes, whether it's say basketball, there's a lot of different type 1 photos. That's a huge market that's taken off, as we know, because PSA is now authenticating and grading them, right? As soon as they bring structure, tickets, right? The vintage tickets, the milestone tickets, the debut tickets, World Series, Super Bowl, so on and so forth. As soon as you bring structure to a market, people will want to collect it. And so my advice
is
get rid of
uncertainty.
Yeah, takes I can tell you with tickets, I told PSA for a long time they should be grading and authenticating tickets just like they're doing cards. And they finally did, because in the early days you go on eBay, but you don't know if it's a real ticket. You don't know if it's trimmed. You don't know if it's a proof or a Z ticket.
You don't know if it's Bill Terry. You don't know if it's Bill Terry.
I will give you 8,000 for that right now.
Yeah, whatever. I think
did you get like a cartoonist to come to Ian's birthday?
$140 for this is what it's right there on the top loader, and I ate it obviously because it came back and they said it was trimmed. And you can, look, it's very difficult to sell, but
in that photo.
It's pretty, dude. It's it's art. It's like you can tell it's pretty nicely centered, and it's centered because somebody made it centered.
Well, what? You can probably just still put it in an authentic holder, right?
Yep.
But
I kept it because I figured at one point in time I would meet Andrew and you, and I would be able to tell the story. So there you go. It all comes around. But yeah, there it is. Bill Terry trimmed.
You live and you learn. Send it to PSA. You might have got it back in 2046.
Well, at the time, you got it back pretty damn quick, man. And I got it back saying, "Sorry, too bad, so sad."
But your niche in memorabilia, you love game used jerseys. Is that right? I'm just deducing.
Yeah. I collect that in the Laker realm of it, and the vintage ones I do. But no, we handle great game used bats, type 1 photos, the rings. I think there's a huge market in or potential bigger more demand if there was more information shared on the championship jewelry, as we call it. World Series rings, Super Bowl rings, NBA rings, watches, the early pocket watches that the players got for championships are so cool. And yeah, some of them are 10 grand and 25 grand and so on, but a lot of them, there's only 5 or 10 known that have surfaced. Like, when you think about it,
wasn't always rings, Andrew. Pins. They give out pins for people who won championships. Pretty crazy.
Good thing these leagues are making more money now. Here's a pin. Congrats, Babe Ruth.
I mean, listen, some of them are pretty nice, but yeah, I mean, look, rings. So, all right. Well, we talked about tickets. We talked about all kinds of stuff. What's the next memorabilia segment that you think might take off?
The prices have gotten up there in certain respects on game worn vintage jerseys. I still feel that it's underpriced, in my opinion. Whether we're talking about vintage baseball jerseys like Mickey Mantle or.
That's it.
I heard the kids. The kids are playing because we're recording this. This is.
You know what happened?
Was that on your end?
The vintage cabal. They came in and they said, "All right, that's it. He's talking about vintage memorabilia. Shut him up. Shut him up before the prices. Shut him up. Let's go. We got to keep him quiet.
You know what I like about David?
That he disappeared on us?
I think it's that he doesn't have any LeBron game used memorabilia. That's my favorite thing.
Come on.
Cage, have you bid on SCP before?
100%. I may have even won stuff from them. Yeah, I mean, listen, these auction houses, there wasn't a crazy, we're talking about 10 years ago. There wasn't just, 1 or 2 you went to. I mean, listen, as it stands right now, PWCC is where I bid the vast majority of my stuff. I bid with Ken Golden. Obviously, I've won an auction with Ken this past week. PWCC with their weekly auctions that are basically all Premier now, and their Premier auctions are pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, I got a book today. I think it was from Heritage. I get actual books, in the mail to look through and look at look at this. Here's the description. Here's the stuff. I definitely have bid on SCP, and I remember bidding on Ken's auction when his book used to come. It was tiny. It wasn't one of the major catalogs of stuff. And obviously, he's grown. But yeah, I mean, guys, take a look as we're waiting for David to come back in. If he does come back in, take a look at some of the stuff he's in there. The premier item that he has right now, It's a Kobe. You can put it up there if you like. It's a Kobe rookie game used photo match jersey, right? If you're a Kobe person, look at this Kobe jersey, to his rookie season with letters of authenticity, photo match, you name it, the whole deal. And if that's not your thing, you'll talk about guaranteed to spark up a debate between me and Andrew. There is a Kobe PMG red signed by Kobe.
So on this, and maybe because I like PMG so much, and they don't feel to me like the same thing as like the Bird Irving Magic card, which is kind of like a base card. This feels like getting like a Prism Gold signed today. I don't agree with this signature. I would get something else signed by Kobe. That's my opinion. Do you agree or disagree?
I think this is a fantastic piece, dude. I really do.
Shoot, I didn't mean to stop.
I mean, normally I'm with you. Don't sign cards, and sure, especially an item like this with Kobe. There's only 90 of them in any kind of condition, you name it. But this person has now created an item that it's one of a kind. You know what I mean? I know it's on card, Kobe auto, the whole deal. This is a pretty sick piece. I'm not going to buy it.
This is Cage before his diet started.
There you go. That's a Ruth. That's a strip card, right?
Yep, hand cut, 1923. Yep. Why did he came into preseason like Luka did this year?
I mean, it's just the artists, man. I mean, people weren't spending a ton of money on cards in the 20s. So
Panini hired the same artist to do Zion's photos.
Maybe. I mean, Babe was a big dude. Babe was, he's larger than life then, larger than life now. So we're going over here some of the lots in your auctions.
Yeah, we were doing a screen share just showing off some of the lots.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, like I said, we have everything from, a few $100s to obviously $1 million and up, and a lot of different categories there.
I mean, it's
not
important
just
to note
cards.
that, guys. Listen, I mean, think about this for a second, right? And let's give some shout outs to where they're due, right? Not everybody's going to come in and bid $1 million Kobe or the PMG that I just pointed out. But an auction house like this, there are vintage cards that are the kind of thing that if you are looking to switch up, consolidate, like I'm doing with my portfolio, right? And you wanted to build a card ladder 50 type index, right? That they have, right? You want to grab a mid-grade Hank Aaron rookie, or you want to grab a low-grade one of those. You want to grab a couple $100, vintage card. They're in this auction. You know what I mean? For all grades, all types, all decades. And if you want to grab some memorabilia, one of the cool things about memorabilia is you could also grab some memorabilia bargains here, right? Later bats, where they're not as rare. Later rings that are also not as rare. Jerseys, autographed balls from somebody who you might be a fan of, but not the whole world is a fan of. They got it all. I mean, it's a really cool, with the memorabilia lean that SCP has. So,
yeah, thank you. And it's easy to register. Just go right to our site and you get your user ID and your password, and you're off and running. And anybody in the world can go to our site and see what the prices are. You can see, the Kobe Bryant right now is at, all in is over $1 million. Anybody can go and look at that. It's kind of fun to watch.
So one last thing I'll leave you with is this. Andrew says, what would you like to get your hands on? How about the stuff you have gotten your hands on but is not being auctioned? So you are a premier collector, memorabilia, you name it, Laker stuff, right? So if Andrew came over there and, he was in the corner and he was doing his thing, right? And he dropped it on the ground while it was still lit. And God forbid, fire in the place. What's the one item you are grabbing before you run out? Not your kids, not your wife, not anything like that. That's cheating.
They're already gone.
One piece, yeah, that's it. One piece of one memorabilia item from your collection that is the one you're grabbing. You can only grab one, so don't cheat.
You can only grab one, huh? I would say where the genesis of the collection comes in. For we're talking about the Laker Shrine, I would say I have George Mikan's game worn jersey. He was, Mr. Basketball. It's where it all started. He was the first star of the league, not just Lakers, the league in the infancy of the NBA in the late 40s and 50s. I have his jersey. There's only 3 known. I got it right from George Mikan. I have his collection that I bought from him, number 99. I love that piece. The Hall of Fame has one that's on display, and there's another collector. And then, I have one. I had him sign it. And he actually, when the Lakers got Shaquille O'Neal in 1996, they did a cover of the premiere or the basketball issue of the start of the season that year. Shaq was on the front with Mikan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They were kind of doing like the Laker great centers, and it was a kind of a famous cover. Well, Mikan came out here to LA to do the photo shoot, and he called me, and he wanted to borrow his original Laker jersey back to slip on to wear for the photo shoot. They wanted them all to wear their real jerseys. So we had some fun with that.
You told them no.
I did not tell him no.
Nobody tells Mike.
I could not tell him no, but it was funny because when I got it from George, I had him autograph it, right? George passed away, I think, about 15 years ago, but great man, a gentle giant, not on the floor, but he was a great person. And I was blessed to meet him, but I had him sign it under the numbers 99. So then when we brought it down to where they shot it at the LA Sports Club gym, they shot the photo shoot there. SI was like, "Oh man, it's autographed," and they didn't want that, right? They wanted to look original. So what they did is they had George fold his arms, and they had Kareem fold his arms as they stood next to Shaquille O'Neal, and that's how they kind of covered up the autograph for the cover of the magazine.
Wow! By the way, I hate to burst your bubble, but there are actually 4 Mikan jerseys. Andrew owns one. He actually wore it to the Culture Collision basketball game in February in Atlanta. He wore it. He played in it, adding value to it. It's now game used by George Mikan and Andrew in Los.
I would say, I mean, that's priceless. I can't even put a number on that. I don't even know where to start. Can we put it in a holder? PSA. I don't know how big would that holder be.
Slab that up. He's Mikan's amazing. That's cool. That's
the good. Andrew Goldberg collection. I hear that's like that little subtext is what people look for. It adds value. Do you think my generation will remember Mikan?
That's a great question. So I go back to. I mean, certainly some people won't, but the thing is when the first 10 years in the business, I was all worried about Well, no one's going to remember Babe Ruth. These people never saw. Who's going to buy Mickey Mantle cards later? They never saw him play. But you know what? That doesn't happen. It's the history. People are buying the history. People, collecting Ty Cobb cards, Lou Gehrig items. They never saw him play, but they know the history of that athlete or that team within the game, and that's what you're collecting. Certainly, people are going to collect players that they follow and see them playing the game now. Of course, they are. But there's a lot of 35-year-olds with a lot of money that are buying high-end Ty Cobb game-used bats, and they never saw Ty Cobb play. But it doesn't matter.
I never met Pablo Picasso, but if somebody gave me an opportunity to buy one of his pieces, I'm definitely going to take advantage of it. Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Really?
You wouldn't buy a Pablo Picasso?
No, the bird is so weird. I thought it was just so easy to do, but maybe I don't respect art. I don't know. Can I ask you about Kobe and Kobe? So Kobe was near and dear to my heart, and a lot of people that don't know this, I listened to an interview with T-Mac, and Kobe always talked about dying young, which actually was very, very weird to me. But he wanted to be a legend. With Kobe cards memorabilia, because of how he spanned this era, right? He was in the 90s, so there was a lot of people collecting them. Then we had 2000s with Upper Deck and all that stuff. And then Panini, and he signed everywhere. So Kobe has a huge collector base, but it also has huge supply. How do you navigate that? Like, if I wanted to get Kobe, whether it's cards or memorabilia, what should I stay away from? What should I look for?
I mean, the only thing I'd say is stay away from is things that are not have the proper authentication with it, right? The same theme that we have through the show here, right? Make sure it's PSA, SGC authenticated in regards to the card that you're collecting, and or if it's signed, it's authenticated, the signature is signed. Same thing with the game worn or game used items that has all the paperwork from the foremost experts on the game use of the shoes or the jersey, if that's what we're talking about. And those items are in demand. I think actually, in my opinion, I think that market, if we're just talking Kobe Bryant, is going to even be stronger in the near future. And the reason I bring that up is there's going to be a lot of documentaries, docuseries coming out later on his career that are not on the mass media. They're not up on the tube yet, probably out of respect, but in time, the stories will come out, and certainly, he was going to have a whole new career beyond his basketball, right? Women's basketball, all the things that he was going to go do, after his 20 years of playing in the NBA for the Lakers. He had a whole, more to this person. But
did you ever get the chance to meet him?
I did a few times. Yes, he actually knew about my collection. And it's one thing that I very much regret. I talked to him a few times about seeing it. He knew about it. And certainly I have a lot of Kobe Bryant memorabilia within the collection that I've got, from his rookie year on. I was just, was just in the moment, right? So I regret that. I always thought he could come visit after he retired. And a lot of players have been here actually to see the collection. Magic Johnson's been here many times. Jerry West a few times, a lot of players. I have them all sign the back of the door. George Mikan was here. Cool. The last 22 years, a lot of athletes have come and seen it. And a few of them, when they were here, within the first 5 minutes, they would ask me, they'd say, has Kobe been here? And the reason they would ask that is they said he knew the history of the game, certainly the Lakers and all the players before him and the Hall of Famers. And he understood it and studied it. And because they always brought that up, because they said he would enjoy seeing this because he knew who George Mikan was and Elgin Baylor and Wilt Chamberlain and all these guys. And one of the players told me, it was actually World Peace, Ron Artest told me when he came here. He said, yeah, Kobe always in training camp, the rookies or some of the guys that weren't even going to make the team, he'd always say, hey, this is the Lakers. First day, you know who George Mikan is? That Kobe Bryant would say this. And they would go, no. And Kobe would be like, if you're going to be on this team and this franchise, you better know who these players that played before you are. It's important to the game. And so anyway, I wanted to share that with you.
I love it. Well, I'm going to take it home with this, Andrew. Russell Westbrook calls you tomorrow and says he wants to come visit your stuff. You let him in. He happens to see the back of the door with all the signatures on it and says, all right, where's the Sharpie? How do you prevent him from signing?
You know what?
You give him a basketball. And
the Sharpie. No. Hey, the Sharpie just went dry. Sorry.
You gotta love it. Listen, we appreciate you. Go ahead, Andrew.
I want to ask more about Kobe. If you have 2 minutes.
Sure.
Kobe what was he like?
He was just calm and smiling and very casual. I met him a couple times in the airport, just, not a lot of people around, and he was great. He was easy. It wasn't a problem, but certainly he's, one of those, his work ethic was incredible. And, growing up in, or living in Orange County here where Kobe, also did, hearing the stories of how early he would go to practices in the day and get there before everybody and first one in the gym and all this and that. I mean, that happened every season. Those are true. He set the standard from the start because, he wanted to be, as Jerry West said to us, the first year after Kobe was a rookie, actually, Jerry, everybody's like, oh, wow, this kid's going to be really good, this and that. And he said, let me tell you something about Kobe Bryant. He's not happy just to be in the NBA. His work ethic in the off season, he wants to be one of the best that's ever played the game, not just be in the game and getting a paycheck. And
I remember his draft night interview. The Charlotte Hornet GM was like, hey, we just traded you to the Lakers, but it's a good thing we did because we didn't have any use for you. And he was furious when that happened. He was like, he's like, draft night, everyone's partying. First high school guard to get drafted in the NBA. He went to go train.
That's incredible. Yeah. I actually have his 8th grade. It's not his yearbook. One of his classmates' yearbook, 8th grade. Now come to my, within 5 or 6 years, he's on the Lakers. Keep this in mind. He wrote to the classmate a little notation. You know how we all did as kids with our yearbooks, right? In elementary school. He wrote there something to the person, to the classmate. And then he said, how about those Lakers, Kobe Bryant? And I love that piece because it was just meant to be. Like 6 years later, he's on the Lakers. He
always talked about how he wanted to be a Laker. Like, because in Italy, he would watch the Lakers. His grandparents would send him films of like the Lakers. He always said he wanted to be a Laker, which is crazy because he grew up in Philly.
Yeah. They said that one of the reasons he became so good at basketball is because, like you said, he grew up in Italy there, right? And his parents actually, I think between 7th and 8th grade said, you know what, we're going back to the U.S. They moved back to the Philly area. And he was furious. He had friends in Italy. He was talking Italian and he was very comfortable there. When you're a kid, you don't want to move and new friends and all the disruption, right? So, but they moved, and he said that he was so upset that he just said, I just started playing basketball. Like that was my outlet. Like I'm going to play hoops. I'm going to get better at this because I want to be back in Italy. And of course, he grew up through that, but it was kind of a moment for him when he looked back of what were some experiences that made you launched into becoming one of the greatest of, within your sport.
He didn't make a single basket when he was 11 years old in that summer camp, right? His dad was a legend in Philly. His uncle's a legend in Philly. And he moves from Italy, and he doesn't make a basket in his summer league. Kate, I'm nerding out over Kobe. I'm a Kobe guy.
Well, I got to tell you, hot take, however you do it. End of his career, looking back, obviously I respect Kobe Bryant, but when he was playing, I never thought of Kobe as a great. I just never did. Obviously top 50 player, sure, but people put him in the top 5, top 10 of all time. Maybe part of it is because I'm old, and I'm a Shaq fan, which I guess part of it plays into it because those two always kind of butted heads. And the first couple championships, I put all on Shaq's shoulders. He's the one who won the MVP. He's the one that I think brought him there. Kobe gets credit for it now in the anthology here. When you look back on his career, those are all Kobe's rings, but I view those as Shaq's rings. Kobe, I give him all the credit in the world for doing more with less, right? There are clearly, like LeBron, people who came in more athletically gifted and didn't have to work as hard, although I'm sure LeBron works his ass off as well. But I can name you 10 people right now that I think are better all-time basketball players than Kobe Bryant. And your generation, which is fine, they hold Kobe in a higher regard than I think most others do, except the local and Laker crazy heads and that kind of stuff. But the funny thing about that is, one of the things we learned from the hobby is that type of crazy love, that translates in the hobby, right? And if people have that affinity for a player like that, your generation of people a little younger, you're getting money, you know? They're going to be the people spending money on stuff. Kobe will be one of those guys that you don't have to worry about, like Ty Cobb, right? People are going to be buying that stuff for a long time to come because of how you hold him in such a high regard. That's the best I can say.
I have my reason.
Yeah.
David, any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that. I mean, that's how it works. That's how it works, right? And we could all debate who the best players are in top 10, top 20, best teams, but that's what makes it all go, right? That's the fun of all this, and I get that, but at the end of the day, it's all about who wins championships, and that's very, very important, right? I love Shaq. I mean, Shaq's unbelievable. He's one of the greatest big men ever. His footwork was so amazing when he would get down in the paint and get that ball, and his spin moves, like no one could do that the way he did. He was just unstoppable. And what a great player. It was a lot of fun watching Kobe and Shaq play together, and certainly one of those, winning the three-peat in 2001, 02. That was some special times that I definitely enjoy.
Oh, we could talk. I could talk for 4 hours about Kobe. What? So we're our podcast is growing. We're very lucky to have. We praise them. Our audience is why we're here. They show up every day like we do. Listen, to the point where now, we get guests of your stature. I mean, caliber. I know stature. I always say that, but like, if you have an ask for our audience, what would it be, David? I'll open it up like that. Where can they follow you? How can they support what you're doing? And what would be an ask for them?
I mean, my company's SCP Auctions. Obviously, we do these auctions and all that. If you go on the internet and follow Instagram, you look up Lakers Shrine with 2 S's. We put a lot of some things up there. Sometimes every day, sometimes week to weeks. Put up, some special memorabilia that's within the collection for people to see. It's not always the most valuable item. Could be anything. It's all history, right? It's all good. All the players, teams, different things within the collection. I mean, going back to Kobe Bryant, I have his cast when he broke his arm in preseason,
right on.
dunking. Yeah, I have his black cast.
Show it.
It's right here.
That's
here it is right here. If you look on his early trading cards, he's wearing this. There you go.
That's you got to get out there. You got to get out there and visit. We'll do a California swing, and you got to get out there and check out the museum.
Why don't you? Yeah,
this would be like your visit to Mecca.
I wouldn't be able to speak. I would be giggling and excited. Like,
come see the Lakers Shrine. It's a lot of fun. It's 35 years in the making. It's all the real stuff from Mikan to the current team and everything in between. Showtime, all the jerseys, trophies, awards. It's been a lot of fun, and it's gotten easier for me over the last 20 years as you kind of pick up collections right from the players to get other players' collections, because they just talk, right? It's just how it works.
And they seek you out. Last question.
Now people are going to want to be in it, right? I mean, that's the deal.
Some respects, right? Yeah, it's gotten definitely easier.
So one of the lessons I learned, like from a collector, specifically collectors, like don't sell something that it would be really difficult to get back, right? With cards. All of that stuff, I mean, that's a lifetime of acquiring. Is that going to your kids? Is that going to a museum? Are your kids into collecting?
Is it going in your coffin with you?
Well, I don't think it's all going to fit in my coffin.
It's a big coffin.
That's a good question. We someday I hope that it goes to a venue, a museum, something that's the right fit. The Lakers know about it. And I'm not selling the collection. So, maybe someday, and they have actually about 8 or 10 years ago, they took about 100 pieces and they displayed it nicely at the Staples Center during the All-Star game that was there through the playoffs. And so that was kind of fun. And to see people, they don't know who I am, but they would walk in during the game and you'd see, the grandparent, the father and the son and daughter walk in. And it was so awesome to see, the granddad would say, "Oh my God, let me tell you about, Wilt Chamberlain." And then the son would be like, "Let me tell you, Magic Johnson was the man." And then the kids were focused on Kobe's game worn shoes, right? Of course, it was just every era. And it was great to see that. And so someday, hopefully we can have it in a venue like that. I'm not going to go put it in a burger place or some restaurant, anything like
Please
that.
don't.
Something that it doesn't make sense. But so, we'll see where it all goes. And, the
Andrew,
history's
when
all
you make
here.
it big, man, you can just buy it.
There
To
you
say
go.
it's a dream, there's no other word. Like Kobe was my guy. I played college soccer. That was the highest level I could get to, but I wasn't the most talented. And I tried to mirror my work ethic to him because I was too young for Jordan. I didn't get a chance to watch Jordan. Kobe was like the guy. I was like, he's such an inspiration. When a helicopter crashed and it was like a week I was out of commission. I could not believe it. I'll remember where I was when I got the message. I was in a grocery store and I stopped. I was like, I can't believe that's real. Like I thought someone was pranking me. I really did. So
Yeah.
Kobe was. David, you've been really generous with your time. I could talk to you for hours. It's
Guys,
you're
the
an
ask that I
inspiration.
would have for this is go check out SCP. It costs nothing to register, right? There's a bunch of stuff on there. Go register for the auction. You'll get a bidder ID. You'll get all that fun stuff, and maybe you find something. Go head over there.
Absolutely.
To David's
That's what it's
site.
all about. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. And let me know if I can help you out again. And let me know when you want to come out and see the collection. And there's a lot of Shaquille O'Neal stuff here, too, by the way.
Yes.
I got you covered on that.
Nice. I have some Shaquille memorabilia, too, myself. I got, when I was in Orlando his rookie year, I bought a 6-pack of Pepsi bottles that had Shaquille O'Neal on it. There you go.
I bought Shaq's NFT.
I like soda.
And by the way, Cage, I got to interact with David a little bit before through text, and you have a dry sense of humor. We were talking about the Dubs last night, the Warriors, and it was a little back and forth with Brendan. So thank you so much. You've been more than generous with your time. I've learned a lot. I know our audience is going to love this, and
cool.
I hope to meet you in person one day. Will you be at National by any chance?
Yeah, I'll be out there. Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. We'll see you there.
Yep. Look up. All right, guys. All the best. Have a great weekend.
So thank you all for listening to another episode of Lucas, Tigers, and Bronzo My. I wanted to tell you about a new service that we have starting as of today, and I'm really, really excited to bring it to you guys. So as a part of our partnership with SGC, we got 50 free submissions every single month, and many of you have taken advantage of that. And it's amazing that we could have the opportunity to 650 episodes, 675 episodes in, to go ahead and give back to our community. As people were sending those cards in, they asked, can we send 5, 10, 20 more cards to you guys? We'll pay for it, but we wanted them graded with SGC. You guys know SGC is turning cards around in 13 to 14 business days, have incredible customer service, and their secondary market values are going up day after day after day. And that's exciting for the hobby and exciting for the grading landscape. So we didn't want to just rush into it. We wanted to do it right. And what we did was I relocated here to Boca Raton, Florida. I opened up a P.O. box maybe 5 minutes away from SGC, and I will be hand delivering and hand picking up the cards. So you don't have to worry about anyone else touching your cards. It will be me, and I will update you every step of the way. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to personally pick up the cards from a P.O. box, prep them, new card saver, new penny sleeve, and deliver them to SGC every single Tuesday. Why Tuesday? Well, it lets the stragglers over the weekend come back through on Monday and gives me a day to prep, and it basically gives SGC the entire week to work on grading those cards. Once your cards pop, only then at the end of the process will you be paying for the service. It's $25 per card, simple as that, and the turnaround times have never been faster. We're hearing right now 13, 14, less than 20 business days. So there it is. 9170 Glades Road, number 135 is the P.O. Box in Boca Raton, Florida, 33434. 9170 Glades Road, number 135, Boca Raton, Florida 33434. Of course, you could shoot me an email or shoot me a text anytime, and I'm always available. Many of you already have my email. It's iamandrewgoldberg@gmail.com, or my cell phone number 215-519-9154. Reach out with any questions. I could walk you through the process. I've hopped on the call with quite a few of you, and I'm happy to do that. Love you, Luka Nation.